I'll call the February 15th, 2018 Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting to order at 6:32. Present Hal Kreider, Joe McCaffrey, Lee Baldwin, Bob Strobel, Town Land Use staff, the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, members of the public. We have minutes of January 25th to approve or to go over. And before we get voting, the voting designation is all members present.
Bob, how many do we need for a quorum?
4.
Oh, good.
We have a quorum.
Okay.
I wouldn't have opened it if we didn't. I'd not be allowed to.
We could go have pizza.
No, let's finish the meeting.
Okay.
I was going to say, we don't have that much on the agenda.
Plus we have a guest appearance.
I would entertain a motion for the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion by Mr. Kreider, second by Ms. Baldwin. Discussion on the minutes of January 25th, and I'll just open it up to whoever has anything. Going once, going twice. Makes the assumption that you've read them beforehand. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay.
Abstain.
So 3-0-1, and I'm guessing for absence of meeting?
Yep,
Okay.
wasn't here for that.
I missed it.
It's okay. It happens. Okay, minutes are approved. And we thank you, Ms. Mack, for being flexible with the schedule.
Absolutely.
So I will turn the meeting over to you at this point.
So good evening. My name is Rachel Mack. I'm the GIS planner at Stratford Regional Planning Commission. And so tonight I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of our regional map viewer called MapGeo that the town opted to participate in last October. And so it launched November 1st of last year. So we're a few months in. It's been pretty exciting. Other towns that are participating have added links to their website, and just as more people know about it and find out about it, I've seen the usage grow significantly over the past couple months and gotten lots of feedback from it, and people make comments and I'll be like, oh, you can use MapGeo for that, and there's kind of a general excitement when people find out that this tool is available. So hopefully you find it just as useful and can learn something new. So
you can track who logs on? Because like when I go on, I don't see anything specific to...
No, it doesn't track actual users. So I get a monthly report and it will just list the number just of individuals. So there's no names or specific information, but it just says, like the type of browser. It tracks the different functions that they use, but there's no like personal information associated to it. So I have no idea.
So it records every time you log, every time you open it.
Yes. So if you haven't gone to the MapGeo,
Just the reason I was asking, so you don't really know amongst the towns how the use is distributed, or can you tell?
somewhat. So it has information about the page they sort of where the links originated. So Rollinsford, Lee, and Farmington are the 3 other communities currently that participate, and so I can see where those people are going to sort of after, or sort of where they came from, and so those they're at the top of where that the traffic's being directed to and from, suggesting that it's likely people from those communities.
Just to clarify that for myself a little more, so you can tell which pages they're accessing. But you can also tell what community they came from, or how you put that,
Yep,
where they came from, what do you mean?
Yep, I'll explain a bit more once we sort of get to that area, then I can show you sort of how we can tell,
Okay.
and then it may make a little more sense.
Sure.
But so when you first go to the website, there's a disclaimer that comes up just to explain that, you know, there may be errors or inaccuracies in the data that we always, you know, say it's for planning purposes only, just to not rely on this for legal matters, things like that. But, you know, you can read, but generally you can just agree. And so then we come to the sort of opening page. Since we are the Planning Commission and we're serving the region, we do have data for the whole region available. And so one of the first things you'll notice is this column on the left-hand side that has some helpful information. The first one, the contact SRPC, this has my direct information. If you have questions about MapGeo and you just need to know, so you can give us a call or send me an email, more than happy to help out. The disclaimer is just that same box that you saw before. The About MapGeo and Help are both external websites by the company AppGeo that produces this. They're helpful. Help has sort of some different tutorials if you want more information about how to use some of the different functions. I find it very useful and straightforward. And so then you'll also see some buttons up here that we'll get to in a little bit, and then there's 5 buttons here that are sort of the main tools that we'll use and we'll go through. And so since we're here in Northwood and most likely going to be concerned with data or property information in Northwood, what you can do is click this jurisdiction button and go down and choose Northwood, and it zooms right into the town. And so we'll start with this first search function. So, you know, the big feature of MapGeo is that it's used to view and access all of the assessing data, so all your property card information. And so there's a few different ways you can search for this. You can do it by owner name, you can use address, or you can use the map and lot number. And so say, you know, I live in Northwood, but I have no idea what my lot number is, or, you know, I'm
Right.
just want to
Forgot your address.
Yeah. Seems small. There we go. So I search a name, and then any record with that name will show up. So if I had searched Smith and there's 6 people with Smith, I'd get all 6 records. In this case, there just happens to be 1. And so when I click on it, it zooms into that parcel. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see. Sorry, it's a little scrunched. So then on the left side, you'll see this column change. So now we're getting all the property information. So what we provide through this is the address and parcel number, sort of the owner's name. And so you can see that's where it was pulling from. It was actually the second owner listed, their address. So in some cases, you know, often someone may own multiple properties, and if their address is different than that location's address, the valuation information, some of the specific land information, acreage, the land use code, zone code. And then down here, it will actually show when this data was last updated. So if you bought property in Northwood 2 weeks ago and you came and looked and you don't see your name there, you know, you can tell, oh, okay, that's why it doesn't show my ownership information yet, is because it hasn't been, you know, refreshed since then.
Just, can I, just because I'm familiar with it, ask something? So it shows 1.5 acres, and there's a series of lots there. That was the first, what do we call it right now? There's Linda. What do we call that? Where we can't think of the term, where we,
Open space subdivision?
yeah, yeah. So this was, I think, the first one that was done in town. I don't know if, Bob, you were on the chair, but you were.
Meadow,
This is the Anthony Estates.
oh, the Anthony Estate.
Yeah, and so, see that strip in the back, there's a strip behind this rectangle, there's a series of rectangles, and there's a strip in the back, that's the open space that was
Correct.
designated. So what, here's my question though, so 1.5 acres, is that, do you happen to know, does that incorporate because they have, each has a share in the open space, so to speak, does that include that, or is it?
That would be a question for the assessor.
I think that's, because I live right next door to that, I think you just own like.
You live next door to the,
Yeah, I live at one over, right there.
oh, but, well, okay, I'm wondering.
Other side.
Okay, that's all right, but
Yeah, there's me.
if that's one, yeah, maybe you know, is that 1.5 acres, that right there, because then that
Now,
answers my
1.5
question.
acres would be that parcel.
Just that parcel.
It would be just that parcel. You wouldn't be credited with having a
That's what I'm
share
wondering.
in the commons
Okay,
as part of
the
your
common, I'm
parcel.
wondering if the common gets put into that in some
Because
fashion,
I
okay.
was gonna say, like that property like that's right behind it, that open,
Yeah.
I think that's the tree line. I thought that was.
No,
No,
well, that's
if I
the
can
common.
explain that, that strip that's out behind all those lots is open space.
What
And
she just
each-
highlighted, could you highlight that again? Ms. May?
Each
Yeah.
individual lot if we're talking about assessing now, or ownership, everybody in the association, there's an association that's formed, it's a recorded document at the registry. And how it works as far as assessing in all our open space, and there's several of them, Maston, Davlin, Meadow, they're all open space, I think, some of them over by Bow Lake are. Each property in that group is just like if there's 12. Each one of those 12 is assessed a ability to have that open space, so they get, rather than that open space having a $20,000 assessment or $50,000 on its own, each parcel has an additional fee or a special feature that they have that. But we probably don't want to get into assessing
didn't wanna get into the
questions
assessment.
tonight.
That wasn't the purpose, I wanted to know the
Yes,
calculation
but
of the
all
1.5 acres.
the assessing and property information is sent to me in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't edit or
Yeah.
really manipulate in any way except to format it to be uploaded. So
This was purely just
Yeah.
how they happened to, and I didn't necessarily think that maybe you would know, because I'm throwing this at you. Just whether the common, somehow, some percentage of the common, because they all share in that common, does that get incorporated into the acreage? I'm suspecting it
No.
doesn't, because that acreage is under our 2-acre requirement. So, go ahead, that's fine.
So just another example of the search, how you can sort of get the same property just by searching the address instead.
It's a harder search.
Holding on to 2 little Wi-Fi bars.
Yeah, well, it's our Wi-Fi that's the issue.
There we go. And so again, it's just, it's pulling that information from the property record. If I had searched just Blake's Hill, then we'd get all of the associated parcels with that street. So there's, quite a few different ways to search. How the town formats their parcel IDs are with these 6-digit map, lot, sublot numbers. So if you knew that, you'd have to type in the, 000-110-0000026
So you have to format it in that fashion.
Right, it would have to match this formatting. If I tried to do just the 228-23-5, it's not gonna be able to find that. So that one is a little more specific where you need to be able to match, but once you know that's the format, then you're generally able to use that. So now that we sort of have our property that we're interested in, we want to learn more about what else is going on around it. So this next tab over is the themes. So you actually have a lot of control over some of the different information you can view. Starting at the top, there's 4 different base maps. So the default base map is the SRPC map. It's a slight variation of just the Google base map that when you go to Google Maps, you'll see. The next one, Google Satellite, so you can view aerial imagery. This one maybe is a lot tougher to load, so we may or may not see that. There we go.
So it's pulling the satellite, Google satellite view.
Yep.
And, okay.
We can also see the terrain. So getting that topography. And then the 4th one is the OpenStreetMap, which is similar to the Google base map. If you're familiar with that, it has a lot more features that people will add and contribute to, like it will often have parks and trails, sort of things like that. But right, it'll show like wetlands and some other features. Go back to this one. And so then scrolling down, we have 4 categories of other additional data sets that you can view. I won't go through all of them, but since Northwood is sort of participating in MapGeo, you not only have your property information, but you do have your specific zoning information. For all of the layers, there's also a transparency bar that will turn on. So if you wanted to view, let's see, the flood zones and zoning, and you want to see, where those overlap, but the zoning was obstructing it for some reason, you can make this a little more transparent and make the flood zone darker. You can play with that so that, there's different visuals of how those layers are appearing relative to each other.
Are you able to do only 2 at a time, or can you do several?
I could turn them all on at once if you wanted to, but
It makes it
it may not be very
nice on it.
helpful. But if you want to, you certainly could.
What is the data you have in zoning? Is it the...
For Northwood, it's basically the general district.
Okay,
Right.
sort of, that's what I was wondering. Sort of what I thought.
Are the overlays in it? Must be.
It's the conservation.
And so I think just because
Right.
I'm not getting great signal, you'll also see right here is a legend, and so it'll show the blue for water and a yellow symbol for the general zone. And then, for example, the conservation land, we have that symbolized in a few different categories. Usually you'd see the 4 colors with a label. I think it's just being a little slow to load right now, but...
Are you commenting on our Wi-Fi here?
Just a little.
Yeah. So, Rachel, like the conservation area,
Mhm.
how do you get that data? Is that data we send you also?
The conservation land is a Granite maintains.
Granite View?
Yep, they do Granite View. They sort of have a statewide data set that they maintain. They are dependent on people submitting newly conserved tracts of land to them. And so we do, when we have information about conserved parcels in our region, try to submit those when we can. So we use that sort of authoritative data set. In between, because they publish that once a year, in between, if I know that there's conserved property, I maintain a separate copy of that data set, sort of update it more frequently. And then when they publish it again next spring, we're back on track with their data set, but then, we may add more throughout the year. But so there's no sort of official way that, every time land is conserved, it's always submitted. It is dependent on people doing that, but we try to stay on top of it as much as possible for the region.
So similarly for like the prime wetlands and stuff like that, and the soil types?
The soil types is that's, I believe, a federal data set. We don't edit that at all. And the prime wetlands are designated by the municipality. So Northwood, I believe, has some, but not
Yeah, we
all
do.
communities
That's
do.
That's part of why I was wondering how some of those get.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, so that's, I know Matt, I think, had put together the GIS layer while he was here. And so that's what we've still used.
So that's all data we feed you? Or how does that data get to you?
We maintain it in-house, so we have copies of all this on our servers in the office. And
Okay.
the only thing the town's really responsible for is when they want to update the assessing information is just sending me that Excel spreadsheet. And then that gets updated. I update that on the site. Otherwise, all of the GIS data, sort of everything that you're seeing here, we sort of maintain that or update as needed.
So I'm flipping over to the other side. One of the things that I noticed is like the valuations. If it's in current use, then you see the valuation of the current use. So we don't really have all the tax card information.
No, it is a bit more limited, just because of what we're able to put on there and what we felt was appropriate to show across the region, because there will be some differences from community to community. We felt it was a fair compromise for being able to get a service like this at such a low price, whereas if the town were to do it on their own, it would, be significantly more, just from communities I've talked to.
Yeah,
in
no, it's a
quotes,
good
but,
price. What would it cost, or what would it take the regional planning board to do to provide the additional information? Is that even possible with this application?
So one thing that I think could solve that, because I think with the way towns format it, there wouldn't be a way to do it all within just this sidebar. What you can do, though, could be specific to your community, is if you have full property cards hosted on your site, or if, I don't know if you use Avatar or that software, if those exist somewhere that we can link to, how you have this link right here, this is just the Map Geo property card that comes up. That's something, someone can click and print and just keep as a record. We can also add an external property card linked through Avatar, Vision, Patriot, some of those.
But
So
that's
you
where
would
the
still
extra
have,
money comes in then?
right?
Or do
so
we have that capability now?
No, it is something that is being looked at, and there will be some effort in the coming months to see if that may be included in the 2019 budget. The cost to add the tax cards is substantial compared to the cost of the Map Geo.
Yeah, we'd have to get the Avatar application to do that, because that was like $4,000 or $5,000 when we.
That starts out at, there's a base fee, and then the price that we received last year was $2,500 a year to have it on. But I don't know what, the current pricing is, but that's something that's on schedule, that when our new administrator comes in, that is something that will be being brought to the Board of Selectmen.
I mean, this offers a lot. I mean, the only thing that I noticed was like not knowing the base value or whatever you want to call it before current use. But otherwise, all the other features are really nice, and it's nice to have all the property lines showing over top of the other map themes.
I think for land use, it certainly is a tremendous tool,
Oh, yeah.
a very cost-effective tool for land use.
Yeah,
As
well,
far as assessing, that's a separate thing, and I think it hopefully will be addressed, because that is something a lot of people also want to have access to, that would make a lot of sense to be able to have.
I could envision our planning board meetings having this projector right here. We could put this up, we could put James's conditions and all that, oh, it'd be terrific.
I've already used this for meetings with potential applicants to
Yeah.
customize maps with that conversation.
Thank you.
I was actually driving more towards you posting your comments, but
You want me to have them on
I do.
the GIS?
No, not in the GIS, I just, when you have your list of conditions, I think it would be useful to see it on the screen.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'll start making PowerPoint.
But that was just a lobby, and I'm sorry, I digress, so go ahead.
so just a couple of the things that now you brought up, how it can be specifically helpful to this group. This last button right here is the abutters tool.
Oh, yes.
So when you have a lot selected and you use the abutters tool, you can set a distance, whether it's 500 feet, 100 feet. It defaults
didn't
to
know we had
120, but it's literally you just click find, and then it selects all the abutting parcels within that distance.
And it includes the corners?
Yes. Or just from the boundary of that parcel,
Right, but-
anything within.
But like, okay, so there's a square here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm down at this corner here, so I assume we get this one,
Yes.
and this
Oh,
one,
yes.
does it
Yes.
get?
You can see the buffer right on there.
Right.
It
I'm
just
having a little
drew the
trouble
buffer
seeing it
around
there.
it.
Yep. So this purple area, that's the 120-foot buffer. It calculated. So any parcel that
Oh, when
Falls
you put the
within that.
120, it automatically
you
covers the, yeah.
Can you set it to just whatever, we don't have a distance, can you set it to whatever touches that parcel?
Contiguous.
Or is across the street? And can you like
What
click
happens
on
if
one?
you do that?
You could hand click them on, I suppose.
That wouldn't get across the street.
No, it wouldn't get across the street.
it also missed that one parcel for some reason. I wonder if it's just something in the data, but
But I think if we,
so
But you could add on the ones you want by looking
Yeah.
visually at the.
Yep.
yeah,
Oh.
there's a select tool. I'll talk about that shortly. But so
That's cool.
we'll do 100-foot
So visually,
abutters.
you can see that
And then
if
this-
you want to just manually add it.
Yep, and then this download link, you can export it as either an Excel spreadsheet or to print mailing labels. So if you had to mail notices to
perfect.
abutters.
You're making Susan's night.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm interested in seeing how you add one to that drawing.
let's see, let her get to the select tool.
I know.
You just click on it. So it had those already selected. If I say, oh, I want to include these as well, you just click on those. I'm not pressing anything else. And then it keeps adding them to that
So
selection.
you just have to be in that mode.
Yep.
So, yeah, so you could just go in and look at it and list and, yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Are you gonna give us like a little refund on your salary?
What?
Just teasing you.
No, we just,
So this
we
second
gotta find
button,
things
I
to fill in
skipped
for all
over,
that
though.
free
That's
time.
the select tool.
Okay.
And so there's a few different ways you can select. So sort of playing off the abutters tool, if for some reason you had a very specific or custom selection you need to make, like, just this row of parcels in a subdivision, something like that, you can use click and
Are you trying to select one?
yeah.
The select multiple properties change to the edit.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just have to remember that.
Yep. So in edit, that's where you can select multiple.
Yeah.
And then under draw, it's actually just a free form. So you click
Incorporate
and then
everything in that
draw
area, yeah.
and click again.
Yeah.
That's kind of handy too.
I didn't earlier.
Maybe
Where
we
you
just have to play with it a little bit.
Still drawing.
There we go.
There it is.
Oh no.
She lost it.
It might just be the internet being slow.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's
Just
just
messing
if
with
it's
the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not- well.
yeah, we understand.
Yep. So there's a few different ways you can get fancy with your selections too.
So that's the second from
The
the
second
right?
one. Yep.
Yeah, oh.
Selection. If you hover, they all have that alt text. So this last one is draw and measure. There's
Ooh,
quite a
that's
few different
handy.
tools where you can draw a shape.
Oh. Can you get
theoretically.
distances?
Yes.
Like, say, even for the distance from a
Well, that's what I was just. gonna say.
location to a class 5 road and all those type
Can
of
you,
things?
So I would again just remind that it's GIS data, so there's always a certain amount of error. It's not survey grade. So
Sure.
it definitely can be used for planning and, prep and things like that. But if it was something that came down to, a structure being within a setback.
No, I
you know,
understand that. I'm
things like
thinking more like, people will say, well, how far is it to the class 5 road? Is it 1,200 feet or 600 feet?
Yeah, you can
It
get-
it gives you somewhat a definitive,
definitely.
no, I understand it, it couldn't be used for,
So normally it will show the line that I just measured. I think it's, again, just not quite loading, but then it
Around the
labels it.
circle. That's what it's showing in square feet.
Right, but I mean, see how there's that line?
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and distance.
So, it's measuring the line that you designate. It's measuring internally its own, it's scaling its own dimension that you
Yep.
just created, but is it, so what is that map based on, just in terms of its scale, its original basis? Do you know what I'm saying?
Typically,
I mean-
typically GIS data is generated from flattened aerial photographs.
So, okay, a lot like the GIS.
So
Okay.
you take,
So just like any map, you have to tie it to a projection system, and as long as everything's operating on the same projection system,
Can you
Same.
get
your
the
numbers are gonna be
lot
consistent.
dimensions? Or must you actually, yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Keep
you have
in
to
mind.
draw them in. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it doesn't, okay. Can you stick around for the one discussion we're gonna have?
I can operate it.
Oh, you have, okay, good.
Um,
Oh, wait, whose computer is that?
James can keep it if he needs to.
Oh, great.
That's our PC laptop.
So the last
There you
thing
go.
I want to highlight is, say you're looking at properties and you have a couple different layers up and you're like, oh, this is really cool and exciting that I just kind of discovered some little feature aspect of my property. I want to share this with my neighbor or my spouse or someone. You can use this share link and it will save your exact view and any layers or any measurements or any, text or symbols that you've drawn on. And so that you can send that to someone and it'll open up exactly with what you're seeing.
Oh, that's nice.
You can also print it in a custom formatted map. So there's,
Wow.
2 different sizes. It is somewhat limited, but it'll give you this fairly nicely formatted map.
So that right
Was
there
sort
should
of
be
some-
something we add to applications. No excuse not to have it.
yeah, exactly.
Show all the Northwood data,
Mm-hmm,
the overlay zones.
mm-hmm,
I'll give that in a minute, but
everybody
it
can,
has, the
That's
SRPC for planning purposes only, the scale, a little
Yeah.
scale bar, some general information, but it is a very presentable map. So,
mm-hmm,
for a fairly basic GIS, there's a lot of functionality that I think people are starting to see exists and used for a lot of cool purposes. So
So you're the administrator of the application?
on our side, yes. Yep. We don't host it. AppGeo, so they build it and host it for us, but any data updates I would do through
Right,
the site.
very nice.
Are there any other questions about features or functions that may or may not exist, or?
No, it's good.
what would you do if, okay, so you have it on there. I go on and pull up the property we have tonight, maybe have some of the, little bit of the property around it, have the layers on there. How, would I just print that, or do I have to export it to a PDF?
Nope, so when you have it on the view you want, and you click
just
the
go to
little
print.
printer icon, it popped up in that second window, and then from there, you can save it if you want to save it to your computer, things like that, but it comes out as a formatted page.
Oh, okay. You don't have to do anything else.
You can just print it right from the web browser, and
Okay.
it's formatted to fit the page properly.
All right. Great, thank you.
Sorry, one last thing. The little talk bubble, that's feedback. So if you don't use the contact SRPC to email or call me directly, you can leave feedback about the site. Good, bad, in between. Using that option.
Could you go back to the disclaimer?
Yep.
Please.
What are you doing to scroll that? Because I always have to do something funky to get it to scroll down.
Maybe you have to be in the actual disclaimer box. If I'm outside of it, it doesn't work.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
Sorry.
Or whatever. The bar doesn't work, I know
Just
that.
because I have some experience with GIS from a couple jobs ago. One of the war stories I'll relay from another town who I won't mention. There was a landowner, property owner, who was adamant that his tax card information was not accurately uploaded. And it had to deal with decimal points. He had 2.349 acres, and the GIS data only went to 2 significant digits and listed it as 2.35.
Was it like on his actual property card? Did it list the?
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that. It was dismissed by the selectmen because it actually was on to his benefit to give him more property than he actually had. He didn't care, and he took them to court. And before it was actually up on the docket, the GIS person, who is no longer with that company, went in and said, actually changed the database record in the thing to 2.349 or whatever his tax record was, and said, "Are you happy?" Showed it, clicked on the information. He said, "Yes, I'm fine. I'll withdraw my lawsuit." That is, and I'd say that not as a complaint, more certainly not from MacGeo or SPC's section, but the town's caution to have them, anybody who says it, read the disclaimer about the accuracy of this, because people will insist, have insisted in the past. This is my tax card on a computer and it is not accurate to what my deed says or what I am paying for or something to that effect. And it's incumbent on all of us who use it and all of us who represent the public to make sure that they know, and we all know, that it doesn't matter what the computer says. It's the original source document is the one that is still valid, and this is, that MapGeo is a representation of that data.
Yeah. Yeah, the
And
official
it makes it
record is
very clear, and the disclaimer, reading it, it's pretty good, but people don't necessarily understand that, and it is worth explaining that this is a tool. It is not does not show your legal rights to what you're paying for, what you own, all that other fun stuff. That is your deed, that is your assessing data,
Right.
the other stuff that goes, the legal documents that go along with it. This is just a planning tool.
I can tell you that I don't know how many times over the course of time that people will come in and say, "But my tax card says I have this." I said, "But assessing records are not, a valid record of what you own. The deed that you have recorded at the Registry of Deeds is what you own. And it's in all of our, every single one of our tax maps has that disclaimer on it.
Thank you.
It's a well stated point to bring up, though. I appreciate that, Bob. As a reminder that if anybody, same situation here, the more complex or the more involved information that we have, it appears to the average person that's a stated fact. It's where we always have to go back to land ownership by deed.
I love
A good point.
that one I've heard, and I still hear it, is what the computer says.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good point with any GIS applications for the board to keep in mind. If there's a discrepancy between a survey that a licensed surveyor brings before the board and what it says online, the surveyor is correct.
Right.
Any other questions or?
Yeah, it's good.
Well,
Thank
thanks
you,
for your
Rachel.
time.
That was
Thank you.
excellent.
Give me
Thank
the
you.
opening slot.
Still being flexible with time frame.
And my contact information is on the site or
Good.
whatnot if you do have questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll leave this here so.
One of the continuing story on this, since it's calling,
If you're-
and I won't take long on it. One of the issues that when I was at UNH, the department I worked for dealt with is that New Hampshire has essentially 237 different separate little kingdoms called a town, and each of them contracts with their own tax data preparation and GIS data preparation and SRPCs or regional planning commissions and everything. And so that, use an example, Northwood bases all of its data on its own, as it's the center of its own world, and Nottingham's data is to the side. Well, we won't vouch for Nottingham's data because it's on our map relative to Northwood. And Nottingham says, okay, Nottingham's data is the center of its world, and Northwood's data is relative to Nottingham. And if Northwood is over here and Nottingham shows the map is over here and Nottingham shows the map as separate, when you put them both together, they don't line up.
Nope.
And I can't, as a GIS manager, can't say, well, I'm going to move this one because it throws off Nottingham's data, and I can't move Northwood over to adjacent to Nottingham because it throws everything else off. So when you get into multi-town displays, the accuracy of numbers or adjacency or parcels is, let's say, of questionable accuracy. And it's just something to be aware of. Okay. Anything you want to see while we're still projecting?
Well, I think if you want to take stuff out of order, we should search for Burr.
Do you-
The new case?
The 677.
Or do the 674? I know how to do this. Does somebody else want to do it?
No, drive so it goes a little more efficient. Just so at least we have a reference.
I'm just gonna have to speak your comments slow because I am not typing anything today.
You spilled
Why
it.
don't you move over there?
Sorry, it has to be plugged in. It's fine. I have a tape of everything you're saying.
Yeah, Gary, don't you have a multiple outlet?
Oh, no, I don't.
It's all right.
Except I can't type, so.
Let's see how this goes. I've done selectmen's minutes without notes, so
Okay.
somehow those turned out all right.
Okay. So there is our property. Selection, I go this way.
Everybody received a packet on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do.
Joe, yes.
Yeah, now I have, because I got one from Susan.
I don't have it.
I haven't played with this well myself.
Didn't she provide a confidence stay?
You don't have one?
Well, that's
Didn't
right.
get a
It
packet?
wasn't here either. Hold on, I can go.
Those never got mailed?
It was in an earlier packet.
We distributed them last meeting.
They did, because I haven't been here for a couple of.
Doesn't look like there's an awful lot of other data associated with it. But you can immediately see, from what at least to my eye, that aerial photos might be great for open areas, but for wooded areas, you can't even
I think
see
you can go
Shore
back to
Road.
the other view.
Pardon me?
I think you could go back to the other
Yeah,
view.
well, I just figured I'd show you.
Yeah, you lose some of the trees obscure.
Right.
Yeah, the most useful Google satellite views are the ones done in the winter. We try to do most of them.
Ash. So let's deal with,
That's,
this is not it, that's what I gotta sign.
we signed.
What's this?
What are we looking for? Steed and Burr or
Yes.
the other
I
one?
got, looking through my own notes. Yes. Okay. Hopefully people got a chance to drive by. I know I did the other day.
I tried to drive by, but I could not.
And that brings, can I segue off of that? That brings up an interesting point, because one of the items that the applicant has documented was their improvements on Shore Road. And I will, truth be told, I drove this on Tuesday. And I made sure that I went down, here's the property. There's Harvey Lake Road, which is public. And I took each birch, ash, oak streets to get to the property. And I didn't have too much problem on Birch Street. It was nice and wide. I didn't have too much problem on Ash Street. It was nice and wide. The maintenance, winter maintenance, wasn't bad. No worse than my own road, town maintained road. Oak Street was, let's say, much more difficult.
One lane at best.
Pardon me?
One lane on a good day.
If I had to make an assessment of their winter road maintenance, it was people drive down the road and let it melt. There was no sanding, no salting. It didn't even look like it had been plowed. It based on maintenance of Ash Street and Birch Street. I did not go further down, or Shore Road for that matter. I'm speaking just for myself here as one member. My problem with this application from my perspective in terms of access by emergency services, let alone the applicant, is not with Shore Road. It's the access to Shore Road off of a public road. And this shows, as I had been trying to deal with the zoning board a while ago, the lack of a road maintenance agreement for a subdivision or development. You know, I know there are year-round residents on Birch Street or Shore Road, this end of Shore Road. It appeared to be the same thing for Ash Street. I don't know if there are year-round residents on Oak Street.
There's a few.
And my understanding of Harvey Lake Estates road maintenance agreement is that each property owner is responsible for the road in front of their property.
So, Bob, that's what, I guess that's part of what's confusing me on this. We got this color-coded map, which talks about responsibility, but I don't see how it ties to what looks to be a recorded document, Harvey Lakes Cove Maintenance Road Association. Does this only cover a certain portion of this color coding here?
I don't know what the color coding is.
Well, in the packet, there's this map, and then with that is a color-coded.
Do you need one of those, Bob?
This is the maintenance.
Yeah.
It says this is the maintenance agreement, but I don't think it matches up with this as the maintenance agreement. I mean, or at least I'm not seeing how it matches. Because in the one case they're saying there's multiple things here. This one says there's a road association for Harvey Lake Cove. Maybe this one only applies to this short stretch of road, maybe?
Yes, there's different agreements and different associations within the, so you have to separate each one based on what they are.
What?
Not all of them are recorded at the registry either.
So there are 6 road associations within Harvey Lakes Estates so far, based on the color code.
Or 7.
7?
7, yeah.
That
Where did you get that one?
agreement that they
On the back
have,
of it.
Mm-hmm.
there's only 4 people.
On the back of you.
It's brand new. They just
Okay.
started it.
Oh, they just started it, okay.
Yes, there's only 4 households involved in it. And I think she gave you a list, there's a list of who's involved in it. Like 4 names.
Thank you.
I got the color code, but not the map.
Say that again, please.
The newly recorded, I'm not sure what you have, is that really recent, within the last couple months?
2017, November
Yeah.
21st.
There are only four members because it's brand new. There's 4 households that are, properties that are on that new road association.
So,
Okay.
just so I understand,
Good to know.
this association is meant to cover
If I remember
the houses only
correctly,
on the shore side, but not on the
if I
other
remember
side?
correctly, they have 1 on each, is that right, Linda? 1 on each street? That was the idea?
I don't
Based
think
on the
that's the
color
case.
coding,
I think
No,
it's
okay.
different.
Okay.
I think it's just different groups of people that have gotten together that are contiguous. I don't think it's for the whole street. Well, these are the ones for the selectmen. I don't know what happened to
And
them.
I've been negligent. Member Justin Mikuliski arrived at
I made a note.
6:35, I believe, and was added to the voting designation at that point in time.
Well, we really shouldn't be speaking for their stuff anyway.
No.
Just going by what I
But it-
remember from the ZBA meetings.
It looks as if the access to the actual site is covered from Harvey Lake Road to their property by at least one, if not multiple, through multiple roads and multiple road association, road maintenance agreements. Which is an improvement from prior applications we've had from this area.
I didn't get a chance to see it. Are those paved roads?
No,
No, no.
Ivy Lakes is paved,
So Shore Drive, all those other ones
are all, yeah,
Dirt.
there's a,
Dirt.
you can have a packet of,
Yeah, I have
You have a
these
packet
ones
of-
here. I just wanted to, that's what I was asking. I wanted to make sure what I was looking at.
right,
But this, even at the bottom of this sheet, at the legend, it says, this does not include every road in Harvey Lake Estates.
correct.
But the other thing also, just to keep in mind, it says responsible party.
Each have their own.
But if somebody moves and decides they don't want to plow the road, I don't know.
Well, I think that's part of the issue. 'Cause
Mhm. I think
I
that's part of the
mean,
issue.
I don't know how it was for you, Bob, but the day I went in, I couldn't get there. I just could not get there.
When was that?
I went on Tuesday, I had it in four-wheel drive. Because it was just because of ice.
The week after we got this information, I believe. I don't remember. I went back
January?
twice. I don't remember. I don't know. But I went in each of the roads. I think it was Birch Street was first. I got partway down it and then looked down. That's the way I used to go to get the water sampling equipment on the lot, just a couple north of that. And the gully that cuts across, the water flows down that hill and cuts across. The gully was at least 12 inches deep at that point on that day, and it was ice, so I didn't want to risk getting stuck in the gully and the ice, so I didn't go down that way. Then I tried to go down Ash Street. There was a car stuck spinning its wheels on Ash Street, couldn't get off of Ash Street, so I couldn't get by. On Oak Street, as you said, I don't think it's maintained per se, and two cars had actually slid out of their driveway into the road. So I couldn't get by there either. And then I went to go look at the next street and I thought, it's just getting worse, so I stopped. I wasn't going to risk trying to go up and around. At that point, the roads were maybe only 15 feet wide at best. And if you were to go in, you wouldn't be able to back up the hill. So I tried a couple days later, and it was really no different. And I don't know if any of those roads were actually plowed. I think they were just packed down. And then as soon as you get some ice, I mean, ours, around that same time we sanded 2 or 3 times, but I didn't see anything like that, Bob.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, and I would just like to say also, when I went in, again for the equipment, I went in Beach Street, and even in the summer, I had concerns about making that turn to go south to the property.
Yeah.
Because all
is
the
quite
water runs down that hill off of that sort of T-shaped lot there. All that water runs off that
Yes.
lot, down the driveway and down everything, and it just washes the whole road out. And there's, if the timing is wrong when you have to go in there, for example, somebody's having a problem because of a heavy storm, and the water's, a foot deep torrent down through there, I think it'd be very tough. And then I guess the other aspect is, I think there's only one route in there where it's 1,000 feet.
Say that again?
I think there's only one route in there where it's less than 1,000 feet, or it's 1,000 feet at best.
That would have to be.
From a single point of access, you mean?
Yes, from right there. All the other ones are more than 1,000 feet. And even that one, when I did what she demonstrated, I was getting like 990. But that's why I was going to ask you to do that. Can you do the
Oh, dimension?
Yeah.
Why would you think that would apply?
Well, 1,000 feet or more
From,
from a
Single
accessible.
access point is in subdivision, but it's also in the Board of Selectmen guidelines.
okay. In the single, where are you looking at?
Their
the single-
guidelines are based on the planning boards.
Right, no, I know that, but,
Okay.
um,
I didn't know if you knew they were in those guidelines.
yeah.
Are
No,
you
I think
saying
it was more,
Estimation that Ash is the shortest way in. Is that,
I believe it is. That's the way I measured it.
yeah.
But I might have measured it wrong. But I'm just concerned that if that's the closest and that, for whatever reason, is not in
can you measure distance
passable
again on this?
condition,
Go to the, you want me to drive?
Sure, you can drive.
all the other accesses are more than 1,000 feet.
Okay, I'm gonna watch
You're not
this because I
doing
want to
anything.
remember this too. Could you tell us where you're going
Because
with it?
in the candidate, it's
This
really
is-
bad shape.
That's what
Oh,
The measure
okay.
tool.
The draw tool.
I identify with that.
I
icon was.
So if we want a line from here,
Yeah, but it's not as the crow flies, it says,
850,
it's drive.
it's
right?
along the street,
Yeah.
Yeah, to follow the street.
so
You need,
Yes.
about 900.
And that presumes that's that's the way you would have to go in.
And is that the road that you said everybody was off the road?
I believe it was the,
no.
I believe it was the next one up or down, south.
Oak Street was off. Oak Street does not have a road and maintenance agreement according to the map that the
And
applicants
Birch was a
provided.
concern for me, just because I looked how
Birch
steep the
is
road
just
was. and-
over,
Just over 1,000.
if we did,
You're talking about that big dip in
that,
Birch.
it's about 1,200.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's steep. I think the biggest concern is, really, they're dependent on other folks maintaining the roads, and if there is, I don't think there's anything like this. There's only 4 people that signed this, and I don't know how that works for the people on the other side of the roads. I mean, potentially, there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 people or buildings that would be involved with this.
Well, the list continues on the back. For the
I
next sheet, there's
understand,
8.
There's basically 4 residents, or 4 owners. Most of these are 2, 42, 50, 32, and 38.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean.
So in my mind, 4 out of the 11 have signed this, but it doesn't mean they contribute.
As well, that's only, all the owners are Shore Road. And the issue, like I said before, the issue, I have too much problem with Shore Road. It's access to Shore Road. It's the other ones. that-
I would say, if there was support for this from the neighbors, there would be 11 properties signed on this.
Right.
But I only see 4. So I'm sort of wondering how good the agreement is, or how good.
When you say support, they're supporting the, this.
Well, as of this date,
Modification.
4 of these buildings signed up. Now, that doesn't mean they've contributed money.
There's 50.
It doesn't mean they'll continue to contribute money. It doesn't mean if they move away, in the winter, they'll contribute to the plowing. It just
Darby
means
Lakes Cove
they signed.
Association.
So it just means they signed. It doesn't mean there's any legal requirements
Nope.
or legal comeback. Other than you're not a member in good standing, at least.
Well, they are assessed. I don't know what that all, right? So we talked about the Hardy
Assessed
Lakes,
just means, Joe, your portion of the plowing this year is $500.
and I don't pay it. So,
So then you wouldn't be a member in good standing. because all it means is member of good standing is somebody that's paid in full. So, I mean, I don't know.
Click on that.
But I guess part of what I was hoping was, when I was looking at this document,
You're saying 4, I mean, aren't there 8 here?
yeah, but look at the numbers. 32 is Suzanne Steed.
Oh,
Now go on the next page.
This one is
32, it's the same building.
same person.
Yeah, it's the two
Same
people
owner.
that
Yeah.
are
Well, okay,
applying.
I'm sorry, yes, there's
So then
difference.
38 and 38.
So if you're on the map and you find that property, the Shore Road, I think it's right there. No. The house numbers or the address numbers increase as you go up toward the green line.
Oh, okay.
So it appears that the applicants are at the south end of the red line and their immediate butters to the north are the other members of the
So
association.
nobody on the other side of the road? Like that one, the next one? Or maybe those are on the other street, but like that one right there, which road are they on?
most of these on the other side of the street are addressed
Addressed
to the
other way?
cross streets.
Picked up with these, but
So, okay, so maybe they got as many of the folks as they can that are designated on that road.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
but it's the other associations that have the pink and the orange that have to come through to make that viable. Right?
Yeah.
Seems to be individuals in that case. I mean, you notice there's an individual for orange, individual for pink,
Right, yeah.
and that if they were to drop out for some reason, then there's no,
Militant about it.
well, that's worked out, I don't know, it's not an association apparently, though.
Well, we need to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on this about development on this property.
Well, I think, you know, our comments have to relate strictly to the road,
Correct.
correct? I
Correct.
would just say that the road agreement is non-binding. And the other, and it is dependent on other, either non-binding or maybe not even formal maintenance agreement. Makes the maintenance questionable, and certainly, like I said, the 2 tries that I made, I would not risk, I mean, maybe I would have been able to get down and back, but I would not risk it. I had my truck.
Is this already, like, do they live there full time?
No,
They don't?
no.
So I can understand better, what does because is it like, what does the roads have to do with them adding an addition, so I understand? Because if it's already like,
It's a private road, and there's a state statute that requires any building permit on a private road that is not on a plan signed by the planning board, such as, you know, the newer subdivisions,
right,
requires that they meet a standard is set by the community. The Board of Selectmen have guidelines for issuing building permits on Class 6 and private roads. The statute also requires, because the planning board never had a look at it through a subdivision, to review and provide comments to the Board of Selectmen that would assist them in making a determination on, and it's the road giving access to the property, so it's from the Class 5 to the driveway.
gotcha. So the house
It's
that's
the
there-
whole distance from the beginning, where our zoning ordinance that talks about frontage is actually only the frontage in front of their property for zoning, but under the state statute, it's from where you get off on a class 5 road to where you get to their house,
So the house there now.
or the
obviously-
camp or whatever.
Right. So the house there now obviously is grandfathered in and.
Yes,
But
it
as
can
soon as they go
continue,
to-
it can continue to, they can continue to use it in its current format, they
As soon as
can
go to change it.
maintain it.
Is when it comes into these,
It's when they want to expand
and
it.
that's current
or-
standards for whatever time.
Correct, then it,
And it's essentially, it's configured as a camp, which,
Right.
which most of those were,
But now it's,
they've morphed over the years. A lot of them have morphed into houses, permanent, year-round residences. This was clearly a summer camp situation, because it doesn't even have facilities, bank. I mean, it's,
And I guess, Bob, I'd add to your list of things for us to consider is after they widened a couple places, I think they managed to get it up to 20 or 21 feet, but Nick, in his note, is really asking for 26 to 28 feet wide. And I just look at their pictures, I'm not sure that that's even possible.
the improved Shore Road without, and it's hard to tell right now, but it has been improved, because we have some, they made an effort to add gravel, and there's some documentation to that effect. But with the snow on it, it's a little hard to tell, but 16 feet, 18 feet, if I want to go a little further without really, you're off on somebody's property, is what I get as a road width that show, and that's the best road surface, with maybe a couple of other little exceptions in that grouping. Birch is Oak is a one-lane passage, and it's really jumbled up, and easily somebody can block it and just.
Well, that's what happened when I think it was that street. Somebody was either trying to get in or trying to get out.
Well, I'll use the word, but I'm not gonna say it's applied. I will discount Oak Street as far as access goes, because it's actually the furthest of the three cross streets that are any emergency vehicles or
Ash
town
and Birch.
vehicles. Ash and Birch are the two that are closest.
I
There's
understand.
one's at 900 and one's at just over 1,000.
Do you remember, because I was thinking about this.
They're also in the best condition.
I was thinking about this from a different perspective, though. Is Oak the one that would enable you to come in at the highest point and go downhill to the subject property, as opposed to having to go uphill? Or does Ash?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you go downhill to the
That's what I thought.
the town landing
Because
area.
that's part of what I was thinking was, if you really had to get in there to get somebody,
It's slide.
just so you
Well,
could get to them,
How do you
my
get
first
out?
choice would be go up and down Oak and, basically roll down the hill.
Let me give you my experience from the other day going in Oak Street, in that if you didn't make the turn on Shore Drive, right? 'Cause if you're doing this,
Yeah,
there's the property.
yeah.
If you're coming along Shore Drive and you don't make this turn right here, you go right into the lake, because that's a big open lot. And that was my concern.
Oh, and that's
on it.
maintained by somebody
Was
else.
that you were gonna lose traction and
Lose traction, I
skid?
was gonna skid down.
Yeah,
into
no,
this
but I mean
lot
that
and
road
knock it out.
there, the section of the road he's talking about,
yeah, that's,
that's
The
maintained
lake
by
was
somebody
probably
else.
frozen.
It was frozen at the time, it would not be.
Yeah, well, that was part, I could see down to it at one point, but
Some of this, I will remind us all that this is the applicant is looking at this as a seasonal residence. So winter maintenance is not specifically tied to this lot for their current application. We're touching
well,
on.
you can't say that,
What
because
happens when they sell?
seasonal,
I know, that was gonna be my next point.
seasonal only means that they will not claim it as their permanent residence. It
Exactly.
doesn't mean they won't go ice fishing or
Right.
snowmobiling or whatever.
I wanted to bring that up.
Or leave something plugged in that
Yep.
is gonna get a frayed cord and
Right.
catch fire.
But that
If
way,
they as their permanent residence, does it have to go through the selectmen and planning board?
It'll have to be approved through the zoning board.
And Nick not only is concerned about the width, I mean, he's saying they don't meet the width. They're at least 4 or 5 feet off from the width. The applicant did ask if there was ever problems, and Nick said, oh yeah, and listed them off, so. I'd be very leery.
and having dealt with this issue before, I'll just state this, I'm not saying I'm in agreement or not, or disagreement or disputing it. The idea of a 26-foot road width is generally listed so that 2 emergency vehicles or an emergency vehicle and 1 other could pass without going off the road. There are more roads in town than just this one or Harvey Lakes Estates that don't meet that standard.
No, but if you had 26 feet here, in reality, half the lots would disappear.
Exactly.
Because they're so small.
My road's the same way. You know, there are multiple choke points. There are multiple roads in town that barely make 20 feet, let alone 26.
My road would be in the ditch on one
No, but I
side.
mean, you just, to expand from 16.
Exactly.
You eat up 10 feet and then, I mean, half the lot's gone. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but some of these lots are very small.
So let me flip this discussion around. One of the things that I would like to encourage in Harvey Lakes Estates, either through this application or in general, both preferably, is to encourage the fact and further what the applicants have already discussed by establishing some road maintenance agreements amongst the neighbors and to keep going with that. I don't know how we would do that in our language, if anything.
Other than stating there's the absence of that and that we don't have, I mean, it depends on who here, but don't feel that there's adequate security or adequate addressing of the access. You know, I've said this in regard to this in the past, but these essentially were camps, and you can see by the size of some of them, there was no intention, well, I don't know what people's intention were, but they're absurd building sites. If there was a sewage system in here, I mean, you could make this argument because you could see this over on the Cape in Massachusetts or someplace else where everything's, you know, packed in, but they have sewer and city sewer and water. Don't have it here. You can't even get adequate well and septic systems. Everybody claims they're concerned about pollution on the lake and blah, 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 and yet you start packing all this in, and I realize that's not our purview right now tonight, but that we are encouraging that to go on when in fact these were never housing sites for the most part. There's a few larger lots in here, but you can see what's happened though. There's a lot of people that have built on these lots, and they've pretty much occupied 50% of the lot with the building that's on there. And it's been allowed, it's been going on, but this is getting to a critical point where, because there's still unbuilt lots here or unimproved lots, and I don't know, does this just keep going the direction it is, and this becomes some kind of sardine can here with a lot of people packed in way over any reasonable limit from I think from the lake's health standpoint, that's one issue. From a safety standpoint to all the residents together. That's what we're considering here, whether this road could provide, it seems to me, adequate safety right now. I don't know that that's satisfied.
I guess to your point, Bob, I was thinking ideally the way to go on these would be to ask the people to, I don't know for this particular case, but encourage people or move people towards the the village districts. So that, because, I mean, let's face it, the folks that formed the village district had a maintenance agreement. They had something just like this. And they had mostly members not in good standing. And it was only because some people lived at the end of the road and were basically, had no choice but to pay.
Right.
That maintained it. So I think maybe we need to think about, not for this one in particular, but how do we in general encourage or drive that towards that end?
Can we have that discussion after
Sure.
we develop the language we have on this specific case?
Yeah.
Because I'd rather have this case finished so that
Yeah,
the applicant can move on before we get into the bigger picture.
And maybe, we can discuss separately. We don't even need to do it as part of the meeting, Bob.
Right, no, I know, but I wanted to bring it up. There are some ideas, it's been discussed. Joe and I were on the small lot development group with a couple of members of the ZBA. We had essentially one meeting and that got kicked to the planning board and
Unfinished business.
unfinished business. So there hasn't been much progress, but there are some, and I think there's some ways we can move on that. So what I have is that for my notes, that the road maintenance agreements are informal, I can't say that because they
You could
are
say informal or / non-binding.
non-binding. Well, I have not, or owner dependent is what I have, as opposed to tied with the lot. So that, non-binding.
I think non-binding is a little clearer.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I mean, hey, I had to have this discussion with one of my neighbors, and basically just said, well, you don't have to pay if you don't want to, but we got the right to put a lien on your house. So, your choice, but
Because you have a homeowners association?
Association.
Okay.
it's in our deed.
Okay, and it's in your
It's in our
deed.
deed.
So that's why I mentioned, no, it's not tied to the lot. Or
Right,
the-
not tied to the property
not tied to
deed,
the pro-
yeah,
Not tied to the deed.
good point.
So there is no enforcement mechanism.
That's the big, well,
Aside from
aside from social shaming,
social shaming or yes, neighbor,
yeah,
however you want
I don't
to
see
call it.
anything here about passing out little stickers that say,
right.
member in good standing.
I paid the plow guy.
Yeah,
That's good.
there's a song like that, I think.
Good, I like that.
Maybe it was Tammy Wynette. Sorry. I'll get this under control.
Okay. I do want to comment that the lot is within the 1,000 foot of a public road via Ash Street. The road widths are not to fire department standards, but that is not I have road widths are not to fire department standards, but that is not likely achievable due to geometry.
How about just saying, okay. Or may
Topography,
not,
you mean?
maybe the way you phrase it is fine.
I don't think
Unlikely,
geometry
but
fits
may not be
here.
achievable.
Lot geometry?
Presents
Topography
difficulties.
is,
Geography, thank you.
I mean, they might figure out a way to achieve
Geography,
it, but
okay. Come on, I've been up since 4 o'clock. so.
combine the two.
Geography.
presents difficulties.
Well, I got to say why. I don't want to give
Well,
you a
as
reason
to
why.
what you said, I'm just
Yeah.
rephrasing that one thing, rather than you presuming.
Okay, and so,
Do you have the dependency on other roads?
no, well, Usually I tie that with road maintenance agreements, and that's been covered by the, do we want to mention it again?
Oh, finish your list and then let's just,
Well, that's what I'm trying to do.
Do you have other items or not?
I don't have any other items.
so what were they again, please?
I have, the road maintenance agreements are non-binding, / owner dependent and not tied to the deed. The lot,
Well, I think I would suggest doing it in 2 steps.
okay,
There are multiple maintenance agreements. And then the second part of that would be none of which are binding or require participation.
Which this property is dependent on.
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah.
Are you going to mention the planning board's attempts to get there in the winter, or the conditions, or? I mean, that's something that the board has talked about early on.
we can. I haven't gotten to the road conditions
Oh, okay.
yet.
I mean, there's another bullet point there.
Yeah,
That could be another-
That might make sense.
That
yeah.
might be a good bullet point.
I mean,
Okay, roadways are not the standard.
they're just words.
The reference to tying that to this property is, I think, important, Bob, because that's what we're, and
Yep.
whatever the others do with their roads, the other associations or individuals, which there's several individuals here, this property does, well, they're signing on to in a sense, they're signing on to, what do they call it, the Harvey Lake Estates Cove Association, which only covers
For,
a brief section of Shore Road here, though, yeah.
yeah, I don't know if we,
And that doesn't bind anybody,
doesn't find anybody else.
no. So it's, they could have this in perfect condition, and you can't get there because these guys bailed out.
Right, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah. Said a different way, if the only access was Oak Street, this would basically be an inaccessible.
Yeah. But if either one of these, well, or both of these, this is our shortest one. but-
This is the shortest one, or is this the shortest one?
Yeah, Ash,
Actually,
by about 100
yeah.
feet.
I don't know how it is right here.
It just intersects, it's okay.
Yeah, I know this one down here just is pretty steep.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember how steep this one is to get to this road here.
This is a little uphill, leaving here. It's uphill because I walked it very gingerly this
Definitely.
afternoon. I had my
Okay, so I want
ice
to mention
coats on.
something about access to this site is dependent upon other
You can
road
do it,
ma-
you can go.
other road maintenance agreements, and essentially say this lot is dependent upon them without having any requirements, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Mutual or
Without
com-
any jurisdiction to enforce it. To enforce them.
binding
Any
consensus.
ability to.
How about binding consensus? You liked that word binding before. A binding consensus for access among the.
I don't like binding consensus.
I don't either.
Well,
Without any ability for enforcement?
Yeah, there you go. And, yeah, I think Linda is right. We need to, both winter and summer
Attempts
conditions.
to access this lot in winter were met with varying degrees of success
There you go.
in winter.
Perfect.
Well, I'd say success or lack thereof.
That's the
Well,
varying
varying
degrees.
degrees.
Yeah, that's the varying degree bit, thank you. Okay.
summer is not so much. I mean, winter truly is the bugaboo.
True, summer gets to be, it depends on the.
It can be wet, it can be muddy.
It can be wet, it can be muddy, it can be rutted, it can be,
I think
We
in a
don't
bad
know.
In a bad storm, I think you got trouble.
I would agree with it. There's been times where it's been difficult to get in there for
I'm
other
just saying, I
applications.
think winter is our biggest, and that can block not just snow, but ice, as we've seen this year with ice.
Do we have conclusions we want to include with this? To the conclusions for the road? We've listed our concerns. Do we want to have an overall conclusion? If we have an overall conclusion statement, I would like to include something about we are very encouraged by the applicant's progress on establishing road maintenance agreements.
You could say that we're encouraged that they were able to establish a road agreement. It would be wonderful to see them be binding and extend to where you have town road access.
What would secure a,
They did take at least a step.
secure a reliable access. Securing a reliable access, I mean, that's pretty much, I mean, if that could work in the phrasing there, that would, because that's what we're talking about. The security comes from the binding quality of whatever the agreements are, and we're looking for some kind of a safety access. And it really doesn't.
We are encouraged by the applicant's development of road maintenance agreements in this area. However, further development is needed to secure access to this site from a public roadway.
I think
How about
that's
instead of,
possible.
or the, you want to say the, because instead of a,
Well, yeah.
they're not going to put a no in there. Because it's Harvey Lake
It is,
Road.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's understood. Do we have any conclusions? I just want to say, from the planning board's perspective, yes, no, we do recommend it, we don't recommend it.
Well,
We just want to let the board, the planning, or the board of selectmen make
I
that own
would not,
determination.
I'm not, I would vote not to at the present time, so. There could be a solution arrived at by some people getting together here,
Mhm.
at least from what we're concerned. I wouldn't solve the other issues I have, but that's,
No. Well, what are the other issues? Well, just the,
Well,
septic-
and
the
septic
development
and-
of, yeah,
yeah.
not road, not 674 41s, right. Yeah, I don't want to get into that tonight.
Maybe you could say something, we would prefer not to see this go forward unless there's a more comprehensive agreement.
That's what I was
perhaps
looking
Linda can
for.
add, I mean,
Yeah,
isn't
sounds
there, is it worth mentioning, Linda, you, I think, might know, that the attorney that came before the select board recently regarding maybe the overall issue here, thought that there needed to be some issues straightened out.
Tuesday night?
I think just this past Tuesday, maybe?
Yes. And the selectmen are going to be getting some additional legal advice.
And this one?
Not on this one, about
Others related.
what their options are as far as enforcing the guidelines that they have.
Al, would you want to say that again? Or you want me to read what I wrote down?
Read what you wrote, because I forgot
Okay.
what I said.
We would prefer not to see this application move forward until better access is established.
Unless better access.
Unless.
Better,
Well, I want to say until,
oh,
because I think they're moving toward that
I
way.
get you, okay, yeah,
And
no,
that's a little bit of
yeah.
encouragement to
Yeah,
say
yeah, yeah, yeah.
continue. I'm almost tempted to say at this point, again, this is just coming from me, that what I'd like to say is, get a road maintenance agreement and we have absolutely no issues with it. But I don't want to.
think you should.
I don't-
Can't be quite that blunt.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
too,
that would be the intent, but not the language.
So read that again, please, Bob.
We would prefer not to see this application move forward until better access is established.
Well, reliable, how about instead of reliable access, instead of better? I mean, because
Sure.
reliable suggests that we're looking for something that can be relied on through the year.
Reliable,
Or some other
year-round,
word
Yeah,
equivalent.
reliable year-round.
year-round access is established. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I would hate to have, like, Nicholas have to make a decision like I was making when somebody's house is burning down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, and that's part of it, and I think what I would do is, in our comments, refer this application and the road maintenance agreements to the town to say, here are models of road RMAs that exist for other developments in town. And, town land use staff can certainly we have copies of them somewhere, right?
Well, I think they have guidelines within their own, things within their own guidelines relative to what they would want for a maintenance, to see for a maintenance agreement.
Right.
So I don't think we need to tell them that specifically.
No, I wasn't going to say,
Oh,
I wasn't going to dictate what they needed. I want to encourage them to continue to do this.
oh, you're talking about the property owners.
Yeah, the property owners to say, here's some more models of language that you can use for this.
Well, the only concern with that is that if they followed it and then the selectmen still felt it was not adequate, then they're getting mixed messages.
Okay, good to know. Good point.
Good point.
Okay, so what I have, that not in any, let me see if I can come up with a good order. Okay, so let me start with the positives. The lot is within 1,000 feet of a public road from a single access. The lot is within 1,000 feet of a public road via Ash Street,
How about approximately?
approximately.
I mean, because you don't know that exact dimension.
Yeah.
We're using this line thing here. And
Yep, good point. Is approximately within 1,000 feet of a public road via Ash Street. That attempts to access this lot by the planning board or access the lot in winter met with varying degrees of success in winter. Access to the site is, let me see, double check.
can I
Sure.
just say, because this is Hal's, varying degrees of success, and Hal almost,
Or lack thereof.
he had another clause. I'm thinking
Or lack thereof.
varying degrees of difficulty. This is
Sure,
more
good point.
reflective
Thank
of
you.
what Hal experienced.
Yeah,
But
success
he didn't have
almost
any
sounds like,
success.
yeah.
You either got there or you didn't.
Yes,
Well, I could sort of see that.
I got there.
Yeah.
That's why I draft it. That's why nobody else reads my notes, because you couldn't read my scrawls. Okay, so we have those two. We have 1,000 feet. We have attempts to access this lot in winter met with varying degrees of difficulties. The road maintenance agreements are non-binding.
And could we add a clause there, maybe just to make clear what we're getting at? I mean, what we've already discussed is non-binding parentheses, something, and
Not tied to the deed.
what?
Not,
No, well, you could say that too, no, and subject to not being
not mandatory.
honored or enforced, not
Not
being
mandatory.
honored, not being fulfilled, I don't know, so.
Non-binding, not mandatory.
Because that's what we're getting at by saying that, I think, right?
Well, the other thing, if you read this thing, in the one clause it has at the end, if 75% of the people decide they want to change it, they can.
Right.
They can make it non-existent if they wanted to.
Same people that signed it can say, oops, we changed our mind.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think that's their intent, but,
I have
you know.
varying degrees of concern on that, Linda, because, I mean, even when there's an agreement like this, even like with the Bell, or with the Village District over here.
That's it, yeah, you're right.
They could decide to only spend $1,000 a year on plowing instead of the $4,000 that they're doing now. So, I mean, at some point, you have to just say, hey, we can't control this 100%.
Right.
But, you know, I think what I'm reacting to the most is there's a lot of comments in here about how well-maintained the roads are. And I was scared, and I'd be scared for our rescue folks to go in there.
My suspicion is that a lot of that is for summer. And that's when a lot of these are seasonal. And that's part of, I think, the Board of Selectmen's concern over road maintenance agreements is that those people who are year-round, the burden falls on them. And that's, I mean, it's one thing to plow a 4-lot stretch of Shore Street in winter if I'm the only year-round resident. It's something else if I've got to do also Ash Street, or I'm dependent on somebody else, and you know, oh, they come up, it's homeowner done, and oh, he lets it, he doesn't come up, he's coming from Massachusetts or wherever. It's snowing. I'm there. He's not going to come up, or she's not going to come up till the next 2 days because, well, it's my own personal truck. I got to put the plow on, drive up, do the thing, and then stay, get the house heated, all the other fun stuff. That's a lot to ask for.
We're not going to have, you know,
Or you pay somebody.
we're not going to put a restriction on it that they can only use it between, you know, April and November.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Okay.
you know, they're going to use it in the winter too.
So the road maintenance agreements are, multiple road maintenance agreements are non-binding, non-mandatory, and not tied to the deed.
But do you have that multiple,
The access to the site is dependent upon other road maintenance agreements without any ability for enrollment, enforcement, sorry.
yeah, okay.
Did you say multiple? Is that
No,
what
no,
you
I
said?
think you got it
You're
right.
gonna read this
Access-
out at once?
Yes, I
Multiple
will.
roads,
Yeah, we're just drafting it.
several or multiple road agreements?
Access to the site is dependent upon other
Why don't you just say multiple,
multiple
yeah, road agreements.
road maintenance agreements without any ability for enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah, that's as close.
We are encouraged by the applicant's development of road maintenance agreements in this area. However, further development is needed to secure access to this secure.
Further
Reliable.
development?
Okay, yeah. Yes. No. Hang on. While we are encouraged by applicant's progress. While we are encouraged by the applicant's progress, we would prefer not to see this application move forward until reliable year-round access is established. Year-round roadway access. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's good, Bob.
Yes, no? Head shakes? Anything? Okay. I'll get this on the tape. I'm going to try to read this from my scroll. Attempts to access this lot in winter met with varying degrees of difficulty. The lot is within approximately 1,000 feet of a public road via Ash Street. The road widths are not to fire department standards, but that is unlikely to be achievable due to geography. access, road ma, multiple road maintenance agreements are non-binding, non-mandatory, and not tied to the deed. Access to the site is dependent upon multiple road maintenance agreements without any ability for enforcement.
That one I think should come prior to the one you just read.
Or combine them, yeah.
Does it make that much difference?
Not really, but that's just my preference.
Okay.
Whatever's easiest at this point.
It's going to be what's on the tape
Okay.
in the order that I read it. While we are encouraged by the applicant's progress, we would prefer not to see this application move forward until reliable year-round roadway access is established.
Okay. Good. Wow, thanks, Bob.
Okay. Okay.
I think that
Anything else on this one?
Thanks for your patience on that, Bob.
Oh, thank you for your feedback. It's been, I don't always get it right the first time, and today, definitely not the case. I will personally expect some pushback from them, I would think, depending on what the Board of Selectmen do, but definitely keep us informed.
Yeah.
We have 1802. Which is,
Does everybody have a copy of my review? Or do you pass them out at the beginning of the meeting?
I've got mine.
yep, I do
Are we
somewhere
gonna
here.
put that up on there, or
Boy, I hope we do.
are we done with that?
That should be it. So,
Oh, you pulled it up?
It doesn't look like the drawing. Is this the drawing of it? Or is this a different one?
let me move some things and scale some things.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
It's just too far zoomed in.
Yeah, there we go.
So, case 18-02, they are proposing to merge this lot and this lot into one,
Yeah.
and then subdivide them again into two buildable lots. The biggest concern I have right now, and that's why I put consideration of acceptance in bold, is that I'm not convinced that this meets zoning code requirements for residential density.
Where is Chuck Brown's towing? I'm trying to orient myself. So this is,
There's
Here's-
Denmark Drive.
Route 4,
yeah,
Main Street, it's the second parcel.
If you
The
click on
house-
the one right north of that,
is that Chuck's?
yeah. What does that say?
Yeah,
Everett
Brown, yeah. Everett, but I
It's a
believe-
little house where there was a fire.
Oh,
so
that's where this,
so this.
oh,
yes.
okay. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize it came with that much land.
That's the next lot north. This is the house that burned is this lot?
Yes,
Wait, which one?
yes, the one,
Part of the application.
Oh,
So
it
the
is.
house is about here.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a business right on the corner.
Yes, that business is shown.
It's kind of floody there, though.
Oh, wow, this is a good tool.
Yes.
I love it. So the house is sort of boarded up. Where is it? Right there?
Here.
Okay.
And it's shown on the plans.
Yeah. Okay.
Now put the flood overlay on it.
You're just trying to break this thing.
So, yeah. So show us the layers, James. Where's the wetlands? Where's the conservation overlays?
So,
I think maybe you better go to the other view. I'm having
You
trouble
can-
seeing it on there.
turn on with the satellite.
It's changed lots.
Oop. I don't think you're on the right plot there.
Wetlands looks like it just doesn't want to turn on right now.
Doesn't want to turn on too much detail.
Same
huh?
with prime wetlands. There's probably a lot going on right now. In any case,
Yeah,
so this should hopefully get you oriented.
yeah, that's good. Yeah,
The wetlands on the survey, as we discussed, are going to be more accurate than anything that we have on the GIS. Can everybody turn to page 3 of 5?
3 of 5?
3 of 5.
2 of 5.
So if you look at the top of that page, there's a little box, proposed lot 32 and proposed lot 32-1. So when I take those usable areas, the residential density calculation is essentially, do you have enough usable area to be used in the number of lots that you want to create? And when I use their total usable area figure, the number of lots that I show them being permitted to have is 1.455, which is less than 1.5, so we have to round down to 1.
Yeah,
The good news for them is I think their total usable area is not what Northwood zoning would require total usable area to be. They are excluding the wetlands, which they should be. They are excluding the area with slopes of greater than 20%. Northwood zoning says exclude the area with slopes of greater than 25%. So there might be enough land between 20 and 25% to get them back in business. They are not excluding the land that septic systems are on, because that's not buildable. You can't put a building right on top of the leach field.
Oh,
So my suggestion would be I will call them tomorrow and we will talk through how they should actually be doing that calculation.
let's see where we end up.
And they need to show Northwood's buildable residential density calculation on their plan. As this stands, if we were using the calculation based on the numbers that I have today, I would say this doesn't meet zoning code, and therefore the planning board should not accept this as complete until there's a variance from the ZBA.
Okay, can you go, some of it sounds like it hinges on the steep slopes. I'm not real,
So I can pull up the short version. Is we have a formula. The formula says take the full area of the parcels and subtract anything that's unbuildable. So I think this would hinge on Northwood's definition of unbuildable land, which I'll read to you.
and is it, okay, go ahead.
So unbuildable land is the area of a site that includes wetlands,
Yes,
water bodies,
yes,
slopes exceeding a grade of 25%, and again, they're excluding 20%. Land used for septic systems, floodways, and floodway fringe within the 100-year floodplain as shown on the latest FEMA maps accepted by the town,
okay,
and public utility easements.
okay.
So I would give the applicant that definition and say, can you help me run these numbers so we can calculate what your actual permitted residential density will be.
Okay, so I just want to ask a question of procedure when you're doing this. Do you call the applicant or do you call Brown Engineering to discuss that?
I would probably start with the engineer.
Okay.
They submitted a form indicating that Brown Engineering was able to act on their behalf. That is part of your packet. like I said, I would probably start with the engineer because they're the ones most likely to understand the
Well,
calculation.
that's exactly why I asked, yeah.
And I think if they go back and they run the numbers based on that definition and everything works, then I think they're good to go.
Yeah, so.
But if they aren't able to get above 1.5 units, we need to keep rounding down and they're going to need ZBA action.
So, are this greater than 25%, yeah, well, I see here, it says 20, it's the hash marks areas here.
Right,
Right.
Okay, thank you. So there's quite a few of those on the,
but it's also the floodways.
yeah, I was just gonna say, it looks like that's where stuff flows through too.
Right. I mean, they have 100-year floodplain zone A's.
100-year floodplain is not floodway. Floodway is
Okay.
generally like in the stream, whereas the floodplain is what will flood in a 100-year storm event.
Good to clarify, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Because it was pretty
I
soggy
also-
down there.
Yeah, it is pretty soggy, but it's also steep slope, so it's not include that. The well setback for 32, lot 32 is,
In the road.
it's, yeah, under the road and across the street,
What sheet are you on?
3 of 5. I mean, I agree, there's no place else to put it, but that just seems questionable.
Not in right away.
Well, is that existing or is that proposed? Or,
That's the existing house, I think.
Yeah,
no, no,
it's existing
house,
well.
but the well.
Existing well. Wow. I mean, my first thought was plowing, and any road salt, any stuff that's on the street that's plowed into their front yard is going to go right into your not necessarily your recharge zone, depending on the depth of it, but
Yeah, but isn't that the reason why the state ultimately had to replace a lot of people's
You know,
wells?
fire department, the town's fire department,
Right.
they had to replace the well there.
Yeah.
Right up the street.
I might be ahead on this. Is there an ordinance or is an ordinance proposed to have the radius within your property?
It's proposed.
Hmm?
That's one of,
no,
to have the well radius within the property lines
I
is
thought
was one of
we-
the proposed ordinances.
Is that
Yeah,
one?
but that was,
that was last year.
Was it?
that was last year.
Did it pass?
Is my blue book over
I-
there under that?
It did.
I think, well, one of them
I think
failed.
that was for a non-conforming lot.
One of them failed. One of the
That
initiatives
was,
failed
and
last
that
year.
had to do with...
No, that passed.
Okay, well, I couldn't remember. I know
A
one.
different one failed.
I know it did one. I know one failed, but I couldn't remember which one it was.
Yeah, there was one that did, and I can't remember.
Yes, definition of structure.
Yeah, it was a driveway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So,
but that's an existing well.
Yeah, it's an existing well, so we're not...
Right, but
Yeah,
once
but
you
it's not
change
new.
the lot lines, it's a new lot.
this is a new subdivision here essentially.
True. Good point.
So I think we need to address
Well,
that.
does it, no, if they're using the existing house with the existing well as one of the, I mean, if, for instance, if that house was renovated, it would be a matter of the other house, it would be a question. The existing house with its well would be...
The existing structures wouldn't be impacted by the lot. We should be concerned about the lot's conformity, the conformity of the lots they're creating. When they merge the back piece onto the front piece, there will be one parcel and we will be subdividing again. So every aspect of the lot would need to be compliant. If there's something about a structure that exists currently that's non-conforming, as long as it's not non-conforming because of where it is on the lot, it's fine.
I think the well
That
will have to deal with-
non-conformity can continue.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, if the well goes with that house. Do we have a indication of what the new lot proposal is?
The
That's
sheet 3 of 5 is the new
Oh,
lot
that is-
proposal.
Sheet 3.
For reference,
I have one more page on that.
so the dark black lines are the proposed property lines. You'll note the property line stops about halfway back towards the street on the south property. From there, the property line follows the center line of Kelsey Brook. I confirmed that with the engineer today. I did ask them to clean up some of the labeling there to make that a bit clearer on the plan, that that's what the property line does. The hatched line that just sort of continues straight to the street, that's just a tie line, so essentially it's a mathematical thing so they can close it off. That's not a property line, and I'm sorry, I'm also asking them to label that.
So,
That makes
just for my edification, how does that work when the lot line is a stream or a brook? I'm just thinking about the Rio Grande moved and
Yeah,
regained, how
Well,
many?
it depends on the
Property,
deed. It depends on the deed, because,
Yeah.
I'm asking because of, the calculation is so close.
right, but I was gonna say, some deeds will say the thread of the stream, meaning the center. So if that thing shifts, the center is always the property line. Others say the north side of the stream, or so it depends on the deed, because they're different.
Well,
so I can ask the applicant to come prepared to discuss that and explain the details of their situation. In my conversation with him this afternoon, he told me it was the center line. So if you want more details than that, I could just ask him to be prepared to answer any questions
Well,
about
and
that.
just what happens if,
Your property line moves.
your property line moves and...
Well, it's a future, but we have to look at where it is now.
When his point is accurate, it depends on, as always, depends on how the deed is written. There are, I can't remember which towns it was, but I want to say it was Hollis and Hudson, somewhere south. The property line or the town bounds were dependent on a body of water. The course was set.
Litchfield.
Was it Litchfield?
I used to live in Litchfield. Litchfield lost to Merrimack when the river moved. We lost a huge chunk of land. And the cemetery.
Well, one of them, and it wasn't Litchfield.
Probably Hudson,
The-
because they lost land in the flood.
It was the center line established by a date.
Oh.
And over time, the river shifted, and the question became, does the town bounds
Orient off the
established
date.
by the date change because the river changed? Because you're developing a new lot in the adjacent town, which has access to can't be accessed except from the other town. So they had to, I forget how they resolved it. Other interesting historical note: New Hampshire and Vermont are the only state bounds in the United States where the one state owns the entire riverbed.
That's
New
us.
Hampshire owns to the far shore of the Connecticut River.
Bridge names.
Vermont does not own any of the
That's
Connecticut
interesting, I
River.
did not know that.
Yes, because New Hampshire was a bully.
So my only concern for knowing this and knowing exactly how it's defined by the deed is because of what James said earlier, where 0.1 or 0.2 acres may make the difference between,
Yes.
and we just need to be sure.
So what would happen if we were able to address the acreage in a way that allows them to subdivide, if the stream moved to make that lot smaller, it would be considered a non-conforming lot.
Well, that's why I
If the
say,
stream moved to make that lot bigger, it wouldn't matter.
right, and that's why I say, what's the deed say versus what this is, and so let's just get clarification.
But I
May
would-
not make a difference. You may have this tied down already.
I would think we operate based on the information given to us at the time.
Right.
And we could put a note to that effect on the plan saying, as of this date, here are the numbers. If this
I think as long as they had
changes in
the
the
town's formula for calculating to show that minimum in the plan, I think we would take it for granted that since that's in the plan, that's what we were responding to and that's what we approved. And if something changed about it in the future through no fault of the applicants,
Correct.
it could continue as a nonconformity. If they were to try and subdivide it, they should not be able to further subdivide. They should not be able to because it's
Right.
Okay, I guess what
against
I'm
the
asking
zoning
is,
ordinance.
did they confirm that the deed says that the property is based on the
We
center
don't.
of the brook?
Again, all I got from him was it's the center line. I didn't press him on how is it in the
Exactly.
deed? Is it in the deed as of a certain date? I didn't push. All I got was it's the center line. So I will ask him to come and be
Yeah, and we're
prepared
not
to
trying
talk
to
about more
question his
details.
capabilities or anything like that. We just want to know.
I'm
does-
sure when we talk about how close this calculation is, they'll understand.
Yeah, I would suspect.
Okay, here's a related question, not specific to this application. We use 25% steep slopes. Is that a commonly accessed or commonly referenced data point, or is it more typical to use
So
20%?
you, according to Northwood zoning code, you can't build by right above 20. Between 20 and 25, you're allowed to get a special exception from the ZBA. Above 25, you're not allowed to build on it.
Correct. That wasn't my
For
question.
this purpose, it's not so much tied to what's in the steep slope ordinance, it's just that number.
Right,
So they're sort of separated.
right. My question was more if, what's a typical, I've seen 10%, I've seen 20%. Is 25% easily access data from Granite or other GIS data? Or is it,
We wouldn't rely on GIS data
Well-
for this. I think they would want to rely on the survey data.
is aside from going out and doing ground-based,
Granite, I want to say, has nothing above 15% and above 25% are the easy layers.
the concern or not, I don't know, I guess it's concern, or my point is more along the lines of if we are referencing in our ordinance data that is difficult to achieve for our own reasons and another standard is very easily accessed.
Considering that, yeah, again, the Granite data is going to come with the same caveats of GIS data, not as accurate as surveys. And considering that our subdivision regulations require 2-foot intervals to be shown on plans, the
Pretty easy to calculate.
applicant is going to have to get the information that should be able to allow them to calculate that,
Okay.
in my
I just wanted to, trying to think if there's an easy way to do it.
It might be something worth considering if somebody asked for a waiver to having to show 2-foot contours on a subdivision plan. My recommendation would not be for this board to waive that for the area actually being subdivided. But yes, if they're submitting something that meets our requirements for subdivision applications, I think should be able to get that information.
Good, thank you. Okay. Interesting. And this is on the docket for the end of the month. In essentially next week.
Next week.
Next week?
So you'll note that I don't have conditions of approval on my report right now. I really just wanted to answer the question of whether or not we're even accepting this before I did those. So my suggestion is that staff will follow up with the applicant and we will either work with them to get a more accurate calculation that shows that they meet the zoning code, or we'll inform them that the appropriate process would be to seek the variance from the ZBA first.
Could you inform the board once while we hear? Just as to saying, yes, it's going to ZBA, or no, it's not going to ZBA, it'll be on the docket for next week.
And So if we do confirm with them that that will be scheduled, I'll work to update my report to include that new calculation, and that can be when I work in possible conditions of approval.
So James, did you cover point 2 already, or were you going to get up to that?
I hadn't made it there yet.
Okay.
So that's consideration of acceptance. We've talked about the center line, which is number 1. Item 2, if you look at right where the property line ends and the Kelsey Brook property line begins, the width of that property, the southern parcel, is roughly 75 feet according to my measurements.
I think it might be 50.
I was just using a ruler, I wasn't using an engineer scale. The knuckle method.
Yeah.
So I think they're definitely going to need a waiver request for that, so we would ask them to submit that in writing. And then when they went through the checklist, they indicated that state permits, which in this case, since they're doing a subdivision for less than, is it 5 acres or 4 acres, in either case, it's smaller than the state cutoff, so they're going to need state permit for that subdivision. I'm assuming since they're installing a new septic that they're going to need a permit to install that new septic. They will need a permit from the town of Northwood for the driveway. So those are all things that I would be comfortable with the board including these conditions of approval, but I did want to note that they're still outstanding and we haven't received those.
Did they give site distances on the driveway?
I don't think I have them marked on here. They do have a separate sheet that's 5 and 5. Just looking at the sight lines.
Oh, yeah, they do. Okay.
The all-season sightline, wow.
As opposed to like the snow tire sight line
Yeah.
or the snowplow sight line.
Yeah, that's pretty straight and flat there, isn't it?
Not terribly.
There's a corner right to the left.
It's there's. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll drive by it tonight. Well, I won't go. Anyway.
Okay. Sounds good.
Pretty interesting, James. Interesting the calculation there.
Okay, that is applications. CIP, we can probably pull from the agenda. We're not at that, we're outside of budget season.
Okay.
It still needs to get posted on the town website whenever we get to that. Did I hear you mention the word of our new town administrator? Oh, you can do it? Okay.
I can do it if you just give it to me.
Okay, I can do that. Did I hear word that?
Yes.
Would you care to update us?
That a new town administrator has been hired? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Okay.
As of Tuesday night at the selectmen's meeting, they made an announcement that Catherine LaFawn from Auburn is hired, and they were very specific to say that we cannot say that without noting pending final background checks arriving.
Sure. Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Ooh, sorry.
Any staff items that we haven't addressed?
Is there an update on the master plan?
I haven't
So-
done anything.
No update.
Then my staff item would be, I have some hours that we haven't been using all of for a couple months. Is there something I can do to help move
Yes.
the master plan?
Would the chair of the master plan subcommittee like me to talk to the town planner about getting some hours in for the master plan?
Yeah, or we can just talk and see what we could do and see how many, maybe we, James and I should talk first, see what we think needs to be done. So we know how many hours we're talking about,
Yep.
or do you want to just,
I was just thinking, I trust him to fill his time. Would be the case. I mean,
So I think I would start with, we should just sit down and probably talk about what needs to be done, whether it's reading through a draft and making comments, whether it's wordsmithing a draft, whether it's...
I think it's more offhand, I would say it's the housing section with a lot of the data
Okay.
that would be pulled, because I think that's really,
I thought Joe pulled a lot of that, so it might, this is, rather than involve everybody, let's
Yeah.
have a separate discussion,
Sure.
because what I'm worried about is stuff does need to be wordsmithed, stuff needs to be edited heavily and stuff. And if we have them go update everything that Joe put in, which Joe updated, and now maybe is old, we could face the same thing.
Let's just leave it as we'll talk outside of this meeting about what the priorities are and how we can start to move it forward.
I think that'd be better.
My thought process was just that we had a few zoning changes that we didn't do this year because we wanted to take a few months to talk through them. Those are things that would probably be better done with an updated master plan. So I think it would be good to get this done in the first half of the year, and then the second half of the year we can spend a fair amount of time on zoning changes.
good. Thank you. Okay, anything else?
The only other thing I have is just a reminder on that save the date, so if people are
Yes.
thinking about that.
April 28th is the next OEP, Planning and Zoning Conference, April 28th. Am I reading that right?
Saturday, April 28th.
I think I sent out an email, but the information should be forthcoming as far as what the classes will be and that type of thing.
Yeah, it usually comes in mid-March for what sessions they're gonna have. And it's, what is it, it's usually like 8:30, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
With always a very good lunch. No, and tons of breaks, and you always end up being stuffed if you have no self-control over good food.
In the minutes, it's no longer OEP, it's OSI. The
Oh,
Office
sorry.
of Strategic Initiatives.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry for being old school. Thank you.
It was OEP last year, that's not very old school.
No, well. So, yeah, keep that in mind, and the town pays for it if you tell people, or tell Linda or Susan that you want to go.
Yeah, we'll send out
We'll
stuff
send out.
and then you can just reply.
There's always the two sessions I always like to attend, or the one session I always like to attend are the legal updates, which is always a double session, and if you have any questions about planning board processes and stuff to that effect, there's always a double session for new members, and it lays out a lot of stuff, and it's very eye-opening.
Oh, on the web? Yeah, I did all that.
Okay, anything else?
Website's been updated as far as members,
Okay.
and we've been Susan's been making some changes as well. I think we have, James is now on there.
Okay.
There's like 4 places that Matt's named, and I had to keep finding them.
But
I
we've
think
got
there
that
was,
much
like,
updated.
before
Hopefully
you
it won't
start new
change in
business
March.
thing that
Oh,
still
that's what I
has-
said. Let's do that one. That one's easy. I don't think that one's gonna change.
Oh my god, yeah.
Next Wednesday night is candidates night.
Correct.
If anybody wants to
It's like updating this
meet the candidates that are running for planning board, in case you don't know them already.
giant building.
Okay.
Who was running?
Betty and I are up for another term, and we both put our names in again, and we're the only two who are running, so. it gets to be a competition between who gets more votes. She got more votes the last time than I did. I don't bear any ill will in that case.
That's the extent of the competition.
We should make her chair.
Motion?
Yep.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned at 8:50.